So first of all, thanks everybody for giving up your time, and of course, thank you, Mark, for giving up your time as well. And welcome to this sort of Q&A, really, about Ofsted, and that's the thing we're all talking about still at the moment. And I know it's still very fresh in everybody's minds, this new framework, and even though Mark has completed his Ofsted, I'm sure it's still fairly fresh in your mind as well, Mark. But Mark came on board, believed in what we were doing, and has ultimately gone through an inspection, which is why we're all here today to try and glean your experience, Mark. So it's not about the platform per se. It's about how the inspection felt, the things that we can learn as a community, really, about inspection. So thank you for giving up your time to do that. So just in
Welcome.
terms of sort of context, can you just tell us a little bit about Heathfield and the context of the school so everyone understands where you were up to?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So Heathfield Primary School is in Bolton, local authority. It's a one-form entry primary school, 2-year-old to year six. We've got about 278 children on roll at the moment. So I joined Heathfield Primary School in 2019 as the head teacher, my first headship, and then of course very soon after the global pandemic hit us as well. So that was interesting to navigate. And then we had our first Ofsted inspection under the old framework in 2022. And we got good at that, and we were happy with that. Um, we was happy that we got the good, but we were sitting on a 3-year average key stage two of about 50% combined, and we knew that we could definitely achieve better than that.
When you heard this new framework was coming out, what were your initial sort of thoughts of, what was going to be happening, how are you going to manage that sort of change?
Well, there was a bit of panic and a bit of frustration as well because so obviously continuing our journey, we was aiming for the old framework outstanding. We knew where we stood in terms of relation to the kind of the expectations of outstanding. And obviously it's not just about data. We worked really hard under the old framework on our broad and balanced curriculum, our curriculum design, our subject specific pedagogy. So we was very much on that trajectory where we felt we're in a really secure position for outstanding. And then, of course, they changed the framework, moved the goalpost slightly, get rid of the wording, which is absolutely fine. But it was a bit like, right. So we need to kind of reassess where we sit against all of these things. So yeah, so it was a bit of a frustration. We knew that we were on that trajectory to get outstanding, and that's never been our motivation. And we've always how do we fit into the framework rather than what do we do to meet the framework. We really wanted to make sure the school and the community was recognised for the work we put in over the last 6, 7 years.
Can you just talk us through how you and the team sort of approached pulling your evidence together and sort of using the platform to help you generate that evidence base?
That exact fit was so important. It was so um, anal about making sure you've got every single bullet point, sub bit of bullet points as well, and you've got evidence against that, and they could see evidence against that. Um, so yeah, so we then worked together. So we had to then make sure that think about the expected standard, that we had the evidence that we met that expected criteria. So obviously bought the software, Intelligent Evidence, and started uploading some of our documents that we have. So that I uploaded my previous self-evaluation. So that kind of went there. My school improvement partner reports, DFE reports, like linked to attendance, for example, governor meeting reports, all these different things that we have, certain policies that we have as well, teaching and learning policies, our monitoring and evaluation, and kind of uploaded that to the base, mapped it all out, and thought, right, okay, where have we got strong evidence and where have we got certain gaps? Um, and that was really interesting because that's when I say gaps, it was never about, oh gosh, we don't do that. It was actually I wasn't putting the right evidence in to make sure we could meet those gaps. And what was also quite nice is that often when we've done like CEFs in the past and in terms of evidence we use to inform our CEF, it's been a solo activity. Usually in my office, I kind of do it myself and I'll share the outcome with other leaders. But actually, what intelligent evidence allowed us to do was actually, right, okay, so you're the SENCO. Can you look at the inclusion bit? What evidence might be missing? Can you upload that? Can you quality assure some of the comments? Is that true for Heathfield? And again, we could, best we could click that they kind of been validated by. So actually, it made it a much more collegiate approach, and actually, we all took much more ownership of actually how have we got the evidence against each of these standards for the expected standard, which was actually quite different to how we've done things like that in the past.
So let's move on to the inspection itself, and I don't mean to give you any PTSD around that particularly, but um, just give us a little overview of the size of the team, kind of how that all came about, how it landed.
Yeah, so obviously we're one elementary school, and we had three inspectors, which felt overkill. It felt like actually there was nowhere to hide, which is absolutely fine. So we're happy for people to see our school and to see us how we are. But that felt very different to perhaps previous inspections. They
So
spent literally from quarter to 9 they were out meeting parents. Then 9 o'clock they were all three of them were across school, and that was very different. And just as a side note to this, one thing that I'd kind of planned for but not practiced, at 9 o'clock the lead inspector said, "Take me around your school." And I had a script about things that I wanted to highlight, and I kind of had key markers in my mind about when I get to this display, mention this. When I get to this point, mention that. So I kind of scripted that, but I never actually rehearsed it or practiced it. And you're nervous at that time. You got all different pressures of just the usual school day at that 9 o'clock time. So my advice would be you do script it, but you rehearse that maybe with your governors or your other leaders, and you practice doing that walkthrough.
just in terms of the information that you felt inspectors had, as they came into the school. Obviously, there's the portal, which
Yeah.
one of the things that we help with. But in terms of the website and the sort of oversight that they had, and I suppose the view that they'd formed on the school, what was your feeling in terms of what they pulled together to start
Yeah.
that conversation?
So they definitely looked at the website. They looked at like parent newsletters in particular because they were talking about things that had happened in schools. So the week before, we'd had this professional choir come in. She was referencing things like that, but she also did reference things that were on the intelligence evidence um, Excel document that I'd uploaded to the portal. So whilst I don't think for a second she read every single bit of what's on the portal, I do think there were certain bits that they read to just kind of get a bit of an understanding of what the school was like. So, and she's obviously certainly been through all my policies and things like that. She told me that she'd been through those and she checked them all off and they were all fine. But yeah, I do think actually that softer data in terms of parent newsletter was really important, and that links to our Facebook page as well. And there was definitely, you could tell that she'd read some of the stuff that was on the evidence base that I'd put on the portal as well.
So just talking us through the inspection on day one, I'm assuming each inspector kind of took a different area, took a different focus to work on.
Yeah, so that's exactly what happened. And then, so they all kind of did what they needed to do. And then they came back for the first reflection meeting. And obviously, the leaders were invited to that. And unlike the previous framework, we could chip in during these reflection meetings. And that's when it came very, very clear how important this toolkit is. So she had her paper copy of the toolkit, and they went to the first one. So it might be inclusion or whatever. They read the first comment. And then she put it out to the table to the other two inspectors and said, right, have we got evidence of this particular statement? They both put their two pennies within, and one might say, yes, definitely, yep, definitely, right, great, tick. Or one might say, oh, well, I've seen that, well, I've seen this. I might then just say, well, I've got this evidence as well. If you want to go and look at this, or I can show you this. And then they might put leave that bit, or I'm not to tick that one off. Then they go to the next one. So that first reflection meeting took a long time. Once they ticked it off, they didn't ever go back to it. That was fine. It was left. But then, of course, as the day went on and the reflection meetings continued, obviously you review it less and less. So at each reflection meeting, get inclusion back up, early years, whatever. Right, that was what we're not getting evidence for. Right, what have you seen about this now? What have you seen about that now? Right, yeah, we can tick it off or not. So yeah, so in terms of that evidence base, so important. Certainly as you're getting towards at the end of the day, where you're thinking, oh, they've not seen that now. Well, actually, what else can I provide for them, or what else can I show them to make sure that we have got evidence of that particular strand?
Did you feel that the team were open to you and your leadership team making suggestions, guiding them? Because I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, and it's a real challenge, but also a real opportunity to get what you need forward.
Yeah, so we kept building that evidence base up, and I do feel certainly as we got into day two, that they were prepared to listen to schools or listen to the school and what we had to say. So at the end of that day one, and this hopefully colleagues will find this reassuring, we only achieved expected in inclusion, which is not where I kind of thought we'd be at the end of day one. And certainly talking to other colleagues who perhaps got expected across the board were pretty much told at the end of day one that's where they were. And going through the toolkit, it was just like a sub sentence that had not achieved on all the different areas. And in that very last reflection meeting, I was probably a little bit defeated in the sense of I didn't really say much because I was just thinking in my mind, gosh, we're setting ourselves as strong here and we're not even expected at the end of day one. Have I got this right? Have I pitched this correctly? You kind of that imposter syndrome type thing kind of takes over. And so the inspectors left and we'd set the timetable for day two. And I was a bit like, so I did phone my SIP actually at that time and said, I think we're going to get expected, and that's perfectly fine. We'll get expected, and that's it for 4 years. But she just reminded me about going back to the evidence base. You're not expected. You don't think you're an expected school. We thought we were an outstanding school under the old framework. We felt we were a strong school under this framework. In all those review meetings, I always had the evidence base from intelligence evidence with me, so ticking off and that particular objective had been kind of agreed to. So that night, that night, I actually got to school about 4:30 that second day morning to kind of give myself a bit of a head shake. I think, right, do you know what, Mark? You know this school. You know it's a strong school. You've got the evidence it's a strong school. So literally, I don't think their bums had even touched the seats when they came in at 8 o'clock that second morning and said, look, I still think we're a strong school, and I want to make sure you see this, 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 and this. I want you to go back to early. I want you to go back to key stage one. I want you to look at every book. At one point, they looked at all three inspectors in my office with 117 key stage two books of all disadvantaged children, reading, writing, maths, history, geography. They had our art sketchbooks. I just threw everything at them because I just didn't want to end that second day thinking if I'd just shown them this or if they had the opportunity to do that. To give the inspectors the dues, they were said, right, not a problem, Matt, we will change the timetable. I'd already pre-warned teachers that there might be a change on the horizon, so be prepared for this. And they changed the timetable and they went back to early, back to key stage one, and then of course carried on with key stage two as well as the other meetings they had that day. Um, and again, but I got the strength from that because of the evidence base that I had, and I knew it was there, and I knew it had been triangulated. So I felt I had that confidence to argue back. Rather, not that they were saying we weren't strong either. She just said at that moment in time, at the end of that first day, we'd just not achieved expected. Um, so that's where we were.
Really interesting. I mean, I think one of the things that you said to me when we were talking about this a few weeks ago, which I thought was a really interesting thing to say, and actually where we want to be as a system, and that you said to me it felt like the school team and the inspection team were both being held to account against the framework.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I think
Really.
and I think that was yeah quite empowering actually that we could hold them to account as much as they were holding us to account.
Mhm. And I suppose if you were to give some advice to a head teacher who is kind of coming into the window, maybe hasn't started, what would you say is the most important thing to focus on?
In terms of uploading, just not to panic because the base does end up building up quite quickly. Block out some time and just start doing that initial upload of putting everything up, and let it track where it goes against. And don't do it on your own. Use leaders because you can all log into the same portal. Use leaders to support you with all of that. But the starting bit's hard, but the second you start, it has very quick traction to getting that evidence base sorted.
Okay. Well, that's absolutely brilliant, Mark, and I really appreciate, I'm sure other colleagues on the call do appreciate your time and just sharing with such sort of honesty and candor the process, because it's one of those things until you go through it, you don't know it. That's the unfortunate way it goes.